you got the mitochondria that make the energy, but the lysosomes dissolve and digest stuff. They will break down things that go in there, and those residues actually get stuck in the cells and in what I call the outsides of your insides, and it basically causes a rigidity. This is actually what we see in older patients, geriatrics and stuff, with Alzheimer's, dementia, and that kind of fun stuff. A lot of metal toxicity will do that, but it could be anything. And then what ends up happening is it's those same compounds that create the little liver spots and the brown spots on your skin. Those particular compounds build up in the body and block. So it's kind of like drying up the surface of your roots on a plant, and then you try to pour more water in it and it doesn't suck it up. Once those things get rigid and calcified like that, and they get calcified because your body tries to send more fat and minerals to heal it. That's what clogs your arteries, matter of fact. But when it does in the brain, that's actually what happens. So you got to be mindful of things that you're putting into the body that you might think are healthful or you need for a disease state, like a medication, that actually will end up biting you in the booty because it's making your cells very rigid and they can't communicate. So you keep trying to pour in things and they're not able to communicate. So
now can these effects be reversed by stopping the process or by cleansing the body?
They can. But they have to be done in the right order. I see a lot of mistakes in the worlds of cleanse and detoxing.
Gotcha.
So you got to do things in the right order and also know what you're working with. Because if you start taking things through phase 1 of liver detox through your cytochromes and you don't know what your cytochromes are, how they do those, you can create these compounds that get stuck as what's called an intermediate metabolite. Then phase 2 in the liver takes over. But if you take those things that are in your brain and in your lipids, pull them through phase 1 and they get stuck as an intermediate, they're 1,000 times more damaging and ROSs, or reactive oxygen species, than if you would have just left the damn things alone.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, so you got to be careful about what you start pulling out. That's why you always want to nutrify first and stick to some of these nootropics that are more nourishing to the body. Yeah.
Interesting. Gotcha. Let me ask another question here. You were talking about the urine organic acid testing. So how does that would that give you any insights into how you should be dosing nootropics? Oh,
sure, 100%.
Okay.
Because here's the thing. Methylation it has everything to do with any of it, right? So how your body moves things through the pathways, from tyrosine going through to go to dopamine, those biopathways are dependent upon things like biopterin and ferrous or iron, copper, and phosphorylated B6, okay? So if you don't have those, so like think of it as you got this log and you want to make furniture. Sometimes we want to make tables, sometimes we want to make chairs, and sometimes we want to make toothpicks. So the log's coming in, this big molecule, you have all these different cofactors, enzymes, and minerals that are going to basically send it through its pathways. Well, organic acids basically say, at this particular point, we know we're going to have this much sawdust created. At this particular point, we know we're going to have this. We can measure these dams of how much of these chemicals are present or building up and relate them one to another, and we can know exactly what along that metabolic pathway where the breakdown is occurring. Is it because you don't have enough serine or glycine or tyrosine? Are you deficient in the copper? Is it the vitamin C? Is it too much copper? Some people have that problem, then they're taking that because they heard that's a biohack, and then it makes them want to kill people. There's all kinds of things along the way, so we have to be careful. And so looking at these different dams along the way will exactly pinpoint what's happening in real time for you now. But then that doesn't tell you capacity. That's where we do the genetic testing, where we take a look at your, how your body methylates with COMT and your 1B1 and all these fancy acronyms and stuff. So the organic acid testing is very precise for that. I mean, it's phenomenal. It's earth-shattering for stuff.
And then once you start this process, okay, like once I do a biopanel, let's say I find out all these markers and I start doing these kind of testings, how long, what's my intervals between getting tested again to see what the effect is on me?
It's all individually based upon the patient because, see, I don't treat labs, I treat people. I don't even treat disease or symptoms. I treat people. So when we talk to you, and it all depends upon what your readiness scale is, how willing you're willing to be compliant. what environment that you're in. I mean, are you a smoker? Are you going to stop smoking to do this? Because if you're sucking down cigarettes and you think we're going to modulate this, it's not going to happen. So I have to give that, because it depends if you're a vegetarian or if you eat paleo, or are you more ketogenic. Are you a bartender? Are you working late at night? Or you got secondhand smoke? There's a lot of factors based upon the individual. Now, I can give guidelines along the way, but generally speaking, the earliest I retest is 3 months, because that gives me about 2 cycles or so for your immunoresponse, which is also related to all of these kind of things, to clear out. Your white blood cells are that help to deal with a lot of stuff. But then at minimum, I mean, is 2 to 3 months, but generally I do about 6 months later. That's a good number to kind of integrate things back into your lifestyle and what I call your environmental inputs. It really is person specific.
Yep, perfect. A lot of people are pointing to ADD and asking, and half jokingly, but I'm sure half serious too, what can they take to retain more information, to focus. But again, guys, this is exactly what we're talking about here, and the whole point of Nootropics is to put you into a state of kind of awareness that allows you to actually deal with these issues, I guess, at a higher level, I suppose, because for all the results that we could tell you that me, Larry, Jameson, my brother have gotten, I'm sure the doctor too, we have the same problem also. We don't feel that we're not prone to these. I would imagine all you guys would agree. With focus and shiny objects, and I think a lot of it, for me anyway, has to do with what's happened in the world in the last 10 years and how many distractions there are, and wanting to pull my cell phone out every 15 seconds, and training your brain to focus on only one spot at one time instead of really having a all-encapsulating view. I met a friend of ours recently, this guy Kusha, who lives down in San Diego, has a very interesting take on health and wellness that I've never heard before, because he does ocular and what's the word for ear training also?
Auricular.
Yeah, auricular training with you prior to even dealing with the body, because of the way that it all interacts together. And I had never even heard of that before. Who would think that your eyes and your ears have anything to do with your overall well-being or with your focus and stuff like that? So it's amazing what we're doing to ourselves unconsciously. But what we're trying to offer you here is different ways to mitigate it, or at least start thinking about and give you awareness about the things that really aren't talked about very publicly, because most of the information we do get comes from the health and science world, which is backed by a lot of money and makes a lot of money. So this is starting to bubble up in small pockets. And
I say it's our fault as patients, because we have abdicated that power and authority to people who don't hold us when we cry. Right? They don't comfort us when we have grief. They don't pay our bills, but yet we're somehow supposed to look to them as being the things of the answer. I mean, they even tell you that in these commercials. Ask your doctor. Don't ask your doctor. You got to be kidding me. You're going to get wrong information. I'd rather you ask your neighbor who's in some damn multi-level No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But the point is that unless they're specifically trained in it, they're not a source of information. Thank goodness for the internet, but there's a lot of noise and confusion there too. But I really try to bring patients back to a grounding and understand that, listen, your life is yours, and at the end of the day, you truly control it. I work for my patients. Like, they're the boss, right? Yeah. If they don't do what I want, they're not being compliant, well, then I release them from care. But if I don't bring them the results, I say fire me. And then find somebody that you can resonate well with and get that message, because you need it and you deserve it. See, my thing is personally, a little self-deprecation. Some of my attention goes away because I just practice so much gratitude, and I'm just immensely blessed with where I'm at in life. I literally, it's not counterproductive, but I kind of do things, in just a different way. But my level of health and well-being, that's a big difference, So I tell people, don't abdicate that to the lab coat and stethoscope people that work with rats and monkeys and sea slugs, which is where they study brain cognition, is actually in sea slugs. But get back into yourself. Be a category of one and embrace that. Work with folks like us. There's a lot of clearinghouse of that. Stay out of the forums that are negative and attacks, and no one can expand your mind of things. And if you have a dissenting opinion, that's just not healthy. Identify the toxins in your life, both emotionally, and these nootropics will make all the difference in the world. All the difference.
Brilliant. So I have one question, and I want to actually talk about personal experience so people know kind of like what's been working for us, and we can kind of share our own experiences. But when people are going through this, there's obviously, not crazy side effects. It's not like one of those commercials that you see on TV, like, oh, restless leg syndrome, it'll stop your leg from shaking, but you're going to have anal bleeding and increased gambling, and you're going to kill your wife, and blah, blah, blah. So there's not stuff like that you have to worry about, but what are some side effects that people should be, cognizant of, at least? And Larry and Jameson, if you guys want to jump in.
Yeah, you guys go first on things that you've experienced, and I'll tell you clinically what we tend to see. So it's a little more scary.
So Larry, what are some side effects that either you've experienced or you're aware of?
Feeling awesome all the time. Some side effects, I would say, edginess. If you take stimulants late, then you're not going to get to sleep.
Yeah.
When you need to get to sleep. Outside of that, the effects for me have been positive. I think edginess and lack of patience at times when I was doing those pre-made stacks came on pretty often. Now that I'm kind of playing around with the stuff myself and modulating dosages and whatnot, it's less. It's actually non-existent. It's a lot smoother. So yeah, that's my experience.
Okay, awesome. Jameson?
I mean, common side effects for especially like racetams would be like nausea, diarrhea, headache, things like that. But the biggest one that I would warn people about, and it's the one that is a big indicator, is fatigue. And the chances are that you're getting fatigue is because your choline is dropped and you need more. Because a lot of these racetams, they need something in terms of a delivery system. And so your acetylcholine levels will actually drop, which will cause fatigue. So a lot of times people won't relate that at all. They'll just be like, oh, I'm tired, I have fatigue. Like, why is this happening? Let me take more caffeine. That's the biggest one that I've personally experienced. And the second biggest that I've personally experienced would be insomnia from them. And I take them like 5 in the morning. So I don't know, like we're saying, everybody's different. That's probably the worst side effect I've had. I mean, I've talked to Larry about this, Guy. I mean, yeah. So.
Yeah, I personally, headaches were the only thing that I ever had, but I thought it was called choline, but same thing. Like, I just knew that at first I was taking 2 pills in the morning with paracetam, and then I was like, I don't really feel like I need it, and I would take like one days I just was like, I'm not going to take it, or I took one instead. And it's not even a headache, it's just like you actually feel like pulsing, or at least I felt like a pulsing on the side of the brain. Right. And then when I went over the dose, for me, I actually had reverse effects, where instead of being really sharp and alert, I actually got a little bit tired and foggy and all that kind of stuff. But other than that, I mean, there's no... The thing that always scares me, especially about Adderall and Ritalin and all these like prescription stuff, which is why I've actually stayed away from modafinil, although I've heard amazing things, I just don't want to go into that world, is I don't like the chemical effect on the body. And so I try to stay away from anything prescription. Like, I try to stay away from, Advil or Tylenol or Aleve or all those things, just because I know what it's kind of doing to me. But I have to tell you, like, from having taken supplements and vitamins and this is literally no different for me and my body than anything. Like, when I took vitamin D for the first time, and like actually felt a noticeable difference. Yeah. This is pretty much in line with that. It wasn't like some drug that I was looking for some sort of side effect. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, there's parts of the brain that are really involved that govern that. They, of course, remember they're neighbors. They're all in the same general vicinity. But you have this area called a CTZ, or the chemoreceptor trigger zone. And in there is where a lot of these neurotransmitters will actually kick off these reactions. One of the things that we see clinically that most common is that nausea, right? So you'll see that, you'll know that, and then headache and that pressure. It really just depends. And again, it's remember what nootropic are we talking about, right? So some of the nootropics are not going to cause any of those kind of reactions that you're typically seeing there. But what you'll end up seeing is we see ringing in the ears and dizziness, vomiting, skin itch, histamine reactions, because histamine are those H1 receptors. They're all related to dopamine and stuff. So you're going to see things that manifest when it comes to mild indicators of inflammation, is what I call them. They're nothing that really can't be overcome, and things like that. I don't know how much time we have, but there are other nootropics that you can actually use that are kind of antidotes to it. So like when using GABAs and L-theanine, you can kind of play with it. So it's almost kind of like an emergency first aid kit if you get a little goofy. On some of those, which is kind of comforting to actually have. But it depends upon what you're doing and what your methylation status is. If you're an undermethylator, if you overmethylate. Some people can't process copper, or they're zinc deficient. There's different things that are statuses that will determine how you will react. The big take home is like what we were talking about earlier, is you just want to track these things. You've got to have a heightened situational awareness and journal this. You should be journaling anyhow, but at the end of the day, you really should be keeping track of what you feel and do these baselines, and there's good questionnaires available for that. So it comes down to dermatological things, brain stuff. On rare occasion have I seen stuff go off in the blood and liver enzymes and that kind of jazz. If you kind of stick to the ones that we've talked about today, you're really in a comfortable zone. Your body will let you know. And the good news is the half-life on them is relatively short. And so if you do have an adverse reaction, you can really just kind of be still and just take a little time away from pulling from it, and the body will kind of wash it out over a period of 6 to 10 hours.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. All right. So here's kind of where I want to wrap this up, because people obviously came to us. Larry and Jameson, you're like the two guinea pigs. Dr. Beck, you're 10,000 patients. I think where people are going to ultimately end this conversation, if they found that this is something they at least want to experiment, I think they want somewhere to start. So Jameson, I know you were talking about CellTep and stuff like that, but why don't we give an idea of what you guys are taking, either daily or like what your stacks look like, so that people have at least some sort of idea of what's possible. You can even share, why you take certain things and what you found they do, so that they kind of get an idea of this, how to put this puzzle piece together, if you will. So Larry, why don't you share a little bit about that?
Sure. So my daily protocol, so I cycle stuff, and I recommend everyone cycle stuff so your body doesn't get used to a particular substance. For me, I do a combination of Ayurvedic herbs along with some racetams, and I stay in a ketogenic state, meaning that I don't eat until like around noon or 1, and then I have a 7-hour window when I eat again. So I find the ketogenic state also boosts cognition. For me, what I do is when I get up, I make a drink of this shilajit that I found. And the shilajit is this like resin that comes out of the ground. It's loaded with fulvic and humic acid, which is highly mineralized, and it's this like black goo. And I mix it in some warm water, and it doesn't taste that great. It kind of tastes like a campfire. I put in bacopa and ashwagandha into it, which potentiate them together, and I'll down that, and I'll start my day with a tall glass of lemon, along with some MSM, some vitamins, fish oils, and transdermal magnesium is a daily practice as well. And then I'll start adding things like pramiracetam, acetylcholine, CDP choline, and that's probably why I haven't really had that effective headaches or nausea or anything, because I have a lot of fat in my diet. I also do MCT oil and coconut oil, and then I've added a bunch of other stuff that I've been playing around with that'll be in the document. So I put in picamilin, I put in aniracetam as well. Sometimes I'll add a little Nupept, sulbutamine, pyritinol, picamilin, So some of these things support cognition in different ways, but I've stacked these things together, and that's what I've been playing around with for the last month or so, and it's been very smooth. And then later in the day, if like I do caffeine about 3 days a week, and I've kind of upgraded the upgraded coffee. So in my coffee, I will